Okay, we are continuing in our step-by-step study through what we've sort of discovered as a spiritual growth development process. And it starts with, the box. We put it in there, people who hate Christianity and how we should be interacting with them. Because even those who hate Christianity, it's not like, we don't need them. No, we are supposed to love our enemies and do good to those who spitefully use us. So we still have a responsibility to interact with everybody in the world, not just those who are a little bit more open to the Christian message or who are already Christians. So we've been working our way up these things, and again, it's not like you have to move from someone who's hostile to becoming annoyed and ambivalent. Go up these steps before you can even become a Christian. No, it's just something to help us understand and have a little understanding of how to interact with folks who might have some characteristics of each of these steps. Our example for the hatred one there was Saul, who persecuted the church. He was looking to have Christians rounded up and killed, and in a very, very short period of time, like a few minutes, the interaction that he had with Jesus himself had all changed. So, there is some, degree of flexibility and expectation moving up, but we're just trying to be able to identify some helpful ways that we can interact with folks whose ideas about Christianity might not be the same as ours, and who might actually have some very good reasons for not really having an appreciation for followers of Jesus Christ in the way that we have so often given that example. Today we are on those who are seeking. We've made it that far up, so that means we're going to be able to talk about those who come to the point of being born again. Next week we're going to be looking at that. But today it's those who are seeking, and Zacheus was a guy who was seeking. Even the psalm talks about how he was trying to get a look at Jesus, and that's what Luke chapter 19 describes for us. So let me just read these verses for us, verses 1 to 10 of Luke 19. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. A man was there by the name of Zacheus. He was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. He wanted to see who Jesus was, but being a short man, he could not because of the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. When Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, Zacheus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today. So he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. All the people saw this and began to mutter, he is gone to be a guest of a sinner. But Zacheus stood up and said to the Lord, Look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor. And if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount. Jesus said to him, Today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and save what was lost. Now, I don't know how well up you are on your biblical geography, but Andy, next slide, we have a little map here of the land of Israel. This is at the time of Jesus, as you can see there at the top left. And the different districts. Most commonly, we'd be familiar with the area of Jerusalem, which is right here. That's the Salt Sea or the Dead Sea down here at the bottom, the Mediterranean Sea out here, Bethlehem, where Jesus was born. And not too far off, just the other side of the mountains, is the city of Jericho. The city well known for its palm trees. And it's actually a very, very hot place, a fairly dry place, but lots of palm trees around it anyway. And it's a city that is quite a bit below sea level. So not too common among the cities of the earth, but it's a city that went through 3 basic periods of its life, having been destroyed utterly twice. Once at the hands of Joshua and the Israelites as they first crossed into the land of promise. Jericho was the first walled city that they came to. So having crossed the Jordan River into the promised land, that was the first battle that they faced, and in which God gave them miraculous victory. It was rebuilt in the days of the Judges, and And in accordance with the curse that was pronounced upon its ruins after the destruction of Joshua's hands, the guy who rebuilt it lost all of his offspring. All of his children were killed in the process of that rebuilding, because it wasn't supposed to be rebuilt, but it was. It was then again destroyed through the process of war, and then rebuilt in the time of Herod, I believe it was. And so there was a city, not on the exact same place. Each of these two rebuildings of the city occurred in different locations. So there are actually 3 different Jerichos, 2 of which are being presently excavated, and one of which exists as a city in which people now live, although it comes from ancient times. So that's where it was. And now we have this guy named Zacheus, who we find out from the text here was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. We don't really care for tax collectors that much in our time. Revenue Canada does not have a really good reputation. Oh, good! Revenue Canada's coming to see us today. That has very bad connotations for us even in our day. It was worse in that time because it was the tax collector was the local representative of the oppression brought upon the local people by the Roman Empire. And so they were typically reviled. To make things worse, tax collectors were typically native people. So Zacheus was a Jew who was working for the oppressive Romans who were occupying their land. So he was doubly hated. 1, because he took people's money. 2, because he was a traitor, basically, to the nation, as most people saw him. And then, well, let's throw in one more. In that process of collecting taxes, he collected more than he needed to. He was a chief tax collector, so he was taking cuts from those other tax collectors who worked for him, and as the text says, he was a very rich man. Not somebody you'd think that would really have much need or opportunity or cause to be interested in this guy called Jesus. And yet there was a lot of activity going around. This is very late in the ministry of Jesus. He's approaching Jerusalem for the last time. And there's been some pretty remarkable things that have taken place. Fresh off of the healing of a blind man, a lifelong blind man. We'll find out a little bit more about him later on. But there's a lot of excitement, a lot of curiosity about this guy Jesus. And Zacheus was one of the people who wanted to find out some more. Another little detail given to us in the text is that he was a short guy. Now, I don't know how many Jewish people you've met in your life, but they're not exactly basketball players in the NBA. Ethnicity-wise, the gene pool tends to be shorter people. And Zacheus was known as a short man among short people. So, he had an obstacle to overcome. And being someone who was hated by people, who was also shorter than most people, you can understand how he would really not be in a position to say, "Oh, excuse me, can I get through here? I'd like to see Jesus." He was someone who was curious about Jesus, but had to find out about Jesus from a distance. Which, Andy, if you go to the next slide, we see some various representations of what people have imagined it would look like for Zacheus to climb a tree in order to get a look at Jesus. And his expectation, of course, would be, hey, I can get a look at him, I'm up in the tree, he's not going to bother about me, I can get my anonymous look. I can find out something more, maybe get a glimpse of him doing a miracle, maybe be able to hear him teach, but there's not going to be any attention drawn to me.